Welcome to the Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs podcast, a place for podcasters to learn what's actually working in the world of podcasting and how to use their podcast to generate consistent leads in their business. I'm your host, Jenny, and I'm so excited you're here. Hey, Savvies, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super happy that you're here, and I can't wait to jump into today's episode. So in today's episode, we're chatting all about writing killer podcast descriptions, as this is something that I see a lot of people struggle with. They don't know what to write here, so they either write the bare minimum or they don't write anything at all, which just is not great. So obviously, if they write the bare minimum, it's not enticing enough. But when you don't include anything at all, you're just doing both yourself and your audience a disservice because, they're not going to listen to the episode because sometimes the title is not enough and you have to reel them in with the description. So yeah, let's dive into the 4 tips I have for you about writing podcast descriptions that will get your listeners to actually hit play on your episodes. So number 1, you want to include a quick 2 to 3 sentence description of what was covered in the episode. This doesn't really need to be fluffy at all. It should be enticing, but not fluffy, if that makes sense. So for example, you would say something like, in today's episode, guest and I chat about all things Instagram, and then kind of hit on the key points that you dive into. Like I said, it doesn't need to be super fluffy. Just, it can be a little enticing, but it doesn't need to be anything crazy. And then number 2, you want to put timestamps of the important points in the episode within that description, because I think it's important if people are looking at your description and trying to figure out what do I need to learn. Some people like the timestamp so they don't have to listen to the whole episode. So definitely include that. It doesn't hurt to include because people can look at that and kind of jump to the point that makes the most sense to them. Number 3, if you have a guest joining you, don't forget to include how your listener can connect with them in your description. So I've seen a lot of people that have guests. The guest is great, but they forget to shout out the guest in the description. Sure, it's included in the episode, but I think it's really important to include it in the actual description itself. So if people are driving or walking or doing chores, they can easily grab that instead of having to stop everything they're doing and remember a URL. And plus, the guest needs to be shouted out too, because they took the time and energy to spend time with you on your show for however long they are on there. So definitely include your guest's contact information. And lastly, don't forget to include any links you mentioned. So if you talk about a freebie in there, if you talk about a tool in your episode, if you talk about some other kind of resource in there, include links to everything that you talk about, because you never know who's going to want to access them. I sometimes will include affiliate links if I talked about something that I'm an affiliate for. So that really helps too. And, it's better to have it there than to not have it there and miss out on those interactions from your listeners, or, your listeners oh, you didn't include that link. So they're not going to get that freebie, or they're not going to download the freebie, because not everyone is available to do it when they're actually listening. They want to come back later to your description and grab it. So yeah, those are the 4 things you really need to have in your podcast description. Obviously, I highly recommend having long form show notes on your website as well and directing people over there. But these are just kind of the basics you need for your podcast description the podcast description, just so that people can look there if they want to. And if they want more long form, more than just the bullet points, they want straight up paragraph style that they can read and transcripts and stuff, then they can click over to your show notes on your website. So this just really gives people a good basis for what your episode's all about, and will kind of give them that, it'll help them make the decision on if they should listen or not, basically, which is really, really important. So yeah, that is it for today's quick little episode. I hope these 4 tips came in handy. If you're not optimizing your podcast descriptions yet, definitely go and do that, starting with your next episode. And then you can go back and adjust any previous episodes. So just start small. Don't let it overwhelm you. I think that's a big part of it is people get so overwhelmed because they're like, oh no, I haven't been doing this. And then they just continue not doing it instead of making the changes going forward. So yeah, just a little inspiration there. It doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be done overnight. So yeah, if you guys want to check out the show notes for this episode, you can check them out at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com. And I will see you guys in the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, and leave a review. You can find us at savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com and on Facebook at Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs and Instagram at Savvy Podcasting. Make sure to join our free Facebook community for podcasters by going to savvypodcastingforentrepreneurs.com/community and join in on the exclusive community just for Savvy Podcasting for Entrepreneurs listeners. I'll see you there.